When Calls the Heart, Season 10, Episode 8. What is and what should never be. Bill came to the saloon and he sat at the table that he and Miss St. John usually sit at and drink coffee. Elizabeth came over and she was looking at him all concerned. The waitress came over and Bill asked Elizabeth if she wanted some coffee, and she said no, and he told the waitress, just one this time. Elizabeth continued to look at him all concerned, and Bill looked at her, and then he said, a woman I barely knew purchased some land from me. It was a business transaction. She just happens to have a fiance. Elizabeth said, it still can't be easy to hear. Bill says she's free to marry any man she wants. At that time, people at another table were laughing out loud. Bill looked over there, and it was Miss St. John's fiance standing up over the table. Lucas came over to the table with some menus, and he said he just checked in yesterday. His name is Bernard Montague. He was coming over to the table, and he spoke to Bill. He said, Mr. Avery, how are you this fine morning? Bill said, I'm fine. He said, and you must be Mr. Bouchard's lovely fiancée. And Lucas introduced him to her. He said, nice to meet you. She said, you as well. She said, Jamie is one of my students. He's quite an inquisitive young man. And he said, yes, Jamie. Oh, wonderful. He certainly is inquisitive. And he said, well, I'm off. Have a good day. The way Mr. Montague mentioned Jamie's name, it was like he was reminded of Jamie, like he was playing a part. And he was reminded that Jamie existed. Rosemary was looking at the paper, and she saw that the governor was going to another town, and that he was skipping over Hope Valley, and she was a little upset, and she was wondering what can they do to get the governor to visit them. Many asked, what is the reason why the governor doesn't stop here? And Rosemary said, it's because, well, somebody, I can't remember who it was, said, we haven't given him a reason to stop here. Rosemary said we should throw a ticker tape parade. And Lee said, I wonder if Fiona can figure out a way to advertise it over the radio. Many said, how about a choir? And Rosemary said, that's a great idea. Didn't I hear you say that you ran the church choir back in St. Louis? And she said, yes. And Minnie is going to be the choir director. Elizabeth and Lucas was walking down the street, and Rosalie ran up and said, Elizabeth, Mr. Bouchard, I just found out I got a spot in the nursing program. They both said congratulations, and Rosalie said, I have you to thank for that scholarship, Mr. Bouchard, and making it available for everyone. You're so kind. And Lucas was saying, no, I assure you and Rosalie interrupted him and said, I'm sure you'll deny it, but I'm thanking you anyway. Rosalie said she had to run, and when she left, Lucas said, do you think Henry will ever tell her the truth? And Elizabeth said, I don't think he's ready. Now I'm just trying to be happy for Rosalie. And Lucas said, as you should. Laura, Elizabeth's old babysitter, came by to talk to Nathan. He said that there were noises coming from the old Avery place, the one that was sold to Mrs. St. John. He said they were over there banging. Nathan asked about Laura, and he said she's doing fine. She's getting ready to go to nursing college. He said she misses babysitting for Elizabeth, but it's a good thing she still has Robert during the daytime while she's at school. After he left, Allie came up to Nathan and said that she wanted to be a babysitter for Elizabeth at night. And Nathan said he'll run it by Elizabeth. Nathan and Elizabeth met on the street, and Elizabeth thought it was a good idea for Allie to babysit little Jack when she goes on her date with Lucas later on. Later that evening, Elizabeth was telling Allie where little Jack's snacks were, and he has some new toys, and that should keep him happy, and that she'll be great. She told little Jack to be on his best behavior before they walked out the door. Little Jack was playing in the middle of the floor with his toys, and Allie asked him, "Little Jack, do you want to play a game?" And he said, "Hide and seek." And she said, "Okay, you go first. You hide, and I'll count to 10. After Allie finished counting for 10, she looked all around the house for little Jack, and she couldn't find him. And she started getting upset. She said, "Little Jack, the game is over. You can come out now." And he still didn't come. And so she went out the door and she hollered, "Dad!" Nathan came over and Allie was crying, and she said, "How could I have let this happen?" Nathan said, "Calm down. Where's the last place you saw him?" She said, "Right here in the living room." And he said, "How long did you have your eyes closed for?" She said, "I counted to 10. She said, "I should call Mrs. Thornton, tell her." Nate said, "Wait, hold on. If you were a little guy, where would you hide?" And he stooped to the floor and started looking around. Alice said, "What are you talking about?" And Nathan looked around the living room and he stopped at the chair and he said, "Maybe only a place a little guy can fit." And he got up and he walked over to a chair in the middle of the floor. He raised the chair up and there was little Jack. Nathan said, "Found him." Little Jack started laughing and Allie sighed. Bill was sitting at his regular table and Henry came and sat down with him. While they were sitting there, Molly and Rosalie came through the door. And as they passed by the table, Molly looked at Henry with an apologizing look, and Rosalie looked at him with a scowl. Lucas walked Elizabeth to her door. She said, "I would invite you in," but Lucas interrupted and said, "No, no, no, no. If little Jack hears me, he may wake up." He kissed her hand and they both said good night. Elizabeth opened the door and said hello, and Allie was asleep and leaning on Nathan's shoulder, and he was reading a book. And she said hi, and he said hello. Elizabeth said, "What happened?" Nathan said Allie panicked, and he told her what happened. Elizabeth said, "I should have told her that he really likes hiding under the sofa." Elizabeth said, "Apple juice?" And she and Nathan had apple juice together, and Nathan said Allie put little Jack to bed and she fell asleep herself. "I thought I should stick around just in case." Elizabeth said, "Glad you did, for her sake." Nathan said, "How was your night?" She said, "Lovely." But really it was kind of this awkward thing in the background going on. They were talking small talk, but I felt some awkwardness. I counted 2 or 3 times where they looked at each other in their eyes, kind of a long time, and then Elizabeth would look away. Finally, Nathan said, "I should wake her up and we should get out of here." Elizabeth said, "You can leave her and pick her up in the morning." Nathan said, "Yeah, well, I think she'd really prefer that." "Thanks." He put the covers on Allie and said goodnight to Elizabeth, and she said goodnight. Nathan got on the porch and he hesitated for a second, and then he smiled and walked away. I wonder what that was about. Elizabeth was adjusting the covers on Allie when she saw a hat, a mounted hat. I don't think it's Nathan's hat because he didn't have on his uniform, so it may have been little Jack having his dad's hat. And she picked it up and she was looking at it, and she went off into space and she started looking at a picture on the table of Jack in his mounted uniform. The next morning she went to visit Jack's grave. She said, "Hi, you. I'm sorry it's been a while. The past few months have been interesting, but everything's fine." She begins to tell him that Rosalie is back. The governor may be visiting Hope Valley. Rosemary has her hands full with the baby and all the other things she has to do. The wedding is coming together slowly but surely. And your son tormented the babysitter last night. which reminded me of a story your mother told me about you and your brother. He gets more like you every day, Jack. I think you will be very proud of him. Henry was sitting on the church pew when Joseph came into the sanctuary. Joseph said, "Henry, good to see you." He walked over to him and said, "What can I do for you?" Henry said, "Nothing really. Just doing a little thinking about Molly and Patrick Sullivan's daughter." Joseph said, "Rosalie," and he sat down next to him. And Henry said that, "Yeah, Rosalie, seeing her reminded me of that faraway look that she had on that terrible day." Joseph said, "Have you talked to her?" Henry said, "That's what I'm here thinking on." Joseph put a hand on his shoulder and started saying a prayer. They both bowed their heads while Joseph was praying, and when he finished, Joseph tapped him on the back and said, "Take your time," and walked away. Later on that day, Henry and Rosalie were passing each other, and they stopped. And Henry said, "Rosalie," and Rosalie said, "I don't want to talk to you." He said, "I just want to help." She began to walk away. She turned around and was walking away, and then she stopped and said to herself, "Oh no, how could I not see it?" She turned around to face him and said, "It was you. You set up the scholarship." Henry said, "You deserve every penny." Rosalie said, "You feel guilty." Henry said, "Please accept it." Rosalie said, "You want to wipe your hands clean again? Buy everyone and everything in this town with the money that you made in the mine that killed my dad?" She said, "No, I don't want it," and turned around and walked away. Rosalie had a talk with Molly. She was saying that she was leaving town, but she wouldn't tell Molly why. And finally she said that she saw Henry, and she's not strong like her mother. She can't be there with him there. She said she felt like a small little girl when she saw him. And Molly said, "But you're not a small girl. You're a grown, strong woman." And she said that there's something bigger than acceptance, Rosaline. Forgiveness. Later on that day, Rosaline went to the barn where Henry was, and she said, "Mr. Gowan," she said, "I want to apologize for earlier." She says, "I was angry. I suppose I've been angry for a long time." Henry said, "You don't need to apologize to me. Ever. I'm sorry for everything." Rosalie said, "When I left town, I never thought I would come back. Too many memories. Good, then bad. I'm trying to hold on to the good ones. I remember that gruff man that used to control this town, and I remember I hated him. That man isn't you anymore. I see that now." She turned around to leave, and she stopped and turned back around and said, We're going to go listen to the choir. You should join us." Henry said, "I'm just going to finish up around here." The choir was singing. They sound really good compared to what they sound like in the beginning. Everybody was off tune, and they didn't think they could get to this point, but now they're singing well. As they were singing, Henry walked through the door in his suit, and Rosalie looked back and saw him, and she scooted down to make a place for him to sit. And he walked on in, and he sat down next to Rosaline. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe.